Good evening and welcome to the Grace Talk. I am Gloria Godson. Thank you for joining us today. Election day is only a couple weeks away, and America is voting in record numbers. Thank God that we live in a nation where we can have free and fair elections. And thank God that we can participate in choosing who our leaders are. But we must choose wisely. We must choose leaders who would advance the plans, the purposes, and the agenda of God in this nation. My guest today is one of those leaders. Donyale Hall is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor here in the state of Delaware. Donyale, welcome to the Grace Talk.
Thank you for having me, Gloria. I really appreciate your platform. It's good to be among believers, especially in a day and a time like this.
Absolutely. Donyale, one of the intriguing things I find about you is that you bring such a rich and textured background to where you are. I mean, I don't think there's any family that really would not connect with, one or two of your roles and experiences that have brought you to where you are today, asking to be elected as Lieutenant Governor of this state. So introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us about Donyale Hall. Who are you?
Well, you saw my background. I told you, I warned you that there'll be a kitty crossing shortly. I'm Donyale Hall. I have been a long time, almost lifetime resident of Delaware. I moved here at the ripe old age of 3 in 1973 when my dad was stationed at Dover Air Force Base. I lost him last year. He was a Vietnam veteran and had um, all kinds of things going on from his exposure from Agent Orange. So God rest his soul. He passed last year. He was a mainstay in my life, and he really created my enthusiasm for community. And I learned about service above self from him long before I even knew what that was called. Family is hugely important to me. I have 10 beautiful children. That was number 7 that walked past just now. So I have to count them. 6 of them are adults, and they have emancipated themselves from my wallet, praise God. I have 4 full-timers at home. One is a junior, one is a senior at the early college high school. And then I have 2 young ones that are in elementary school in 3rd and 5th grade. I have 2 sons that are carrying on the family legacy of service in the Air Force. I'm also an Air Force veteran myself. So we have a strong and rich family tradition of serving in the military. Please keep my son in your prayers that's stationed down in Georgia. He'll be deploying to Jordan in a few months, and I want him to come home safe. So please keep him wrapped in your prayers as well. And I have a small business. I'm a general contractor. When I was in the military, I was aircraft maintenance, so I can turn a wrench with the best of them. And so I've had a long, rich history of walking in very non-traditional women roles, which have created an opportunity to see firsthand how we need to be more sensitive about diversity and inclusion. And so I can tell you that in the early 90s, I left the military a lot better than I found it. And we have enjoyed some strides in that culture as a result of some of the things that I championed way back in the 90s. I've always been very passionate about community. I've always been very passionate about the education system. Being that I graduated here from Caesar Rodney High School in 1987, I was educated in the public school systems. I have 5 children that are graduates of Caesar Rodney, one from the early college high school. And I've seen firsthand how the education system has had some failures, and it has had some successes. And I'd like to be able to dig into education to be able, to find a good balance that makes our kids career college ready. There's an alarming statistic that 40% of our children graduate from high school not on reading level, and that even when they go on to college, they have to take remedial courses to actually be able to take college courses. I think that needs to change, and I think that we can tweak some things with the experience that I certainly bring in that realm, and do some things that'll benefit our children in the long run so that they will be able to go on and secure good employment opportunities when they reach adulthood. As a small business owner, a piece of my platform speaks to making sure that we strengthen small businesses so that our businesses are, they are the mainstay of our employment structure here. And if they fail, then people are out of work. So we need to make sure that we create healthy environment. And the last piece of my platform deals with effective government. I have a master's degree in business with a concentration in finance. So I'm a numbers girl. And I think that we could certainly spend our dollars here in Delaware a little wiser so that we can get people in a good place to support my campaign theme, which is so that all may prosper. So I'm looking at a holistic concept of being able to bring real life experience from somebody who's walked in the trenches and seen firsthand, what the hardships are here, and being able to lend that to gearing policy toward making sure that the people who have been forgotten and overlooked are taken care of.
Wow.
I know that's a lot.
No, let's go back. I mean, I am amazed every time I hear you, speak to your background, because it's not only diverse, it's just so rich. 10 kids. Now I have 3, and that's enough.
Well, I will tell you that number 9 is the work of all other 9 children pulled together. I tell people, I said, that's the one that makes people understand why there are mothers in the wild to eat their young. She takes me there.
Oh my gosh. 10 kids, Air Force vet. Your kids now serving as well, a rich history of service to the nation from your dad to you, and now passing on to your 2 kids.
Yes.
General contractor, small business owner, you can turn a wrench, just a lot. Community service that you bring to your platform right now and what you're looking to do here. So let's start with education. Education obviously is critical to the state of Delaware. I mean, the state of Delaware loses a tremendous amount of revenue because people come to work here and they take their money to live in other states because of the educational system. Something needs to be done about that. And my understanding as well is that the educational system in Delaware is, we spend about, $14,000 to $16,000 per child. That is ludicrous. I mean, we are one of the most high spending states in the nation.
We are.
Then the education that we get, that the kids get, way at the bottom of, in all 50 states. Why is that, and what can you do to fix it?
Well, I think that we're performing poorly here because the money is not reaching the classroom. It's not reaching the teachers' salaries. I think that we have a heavy attrition of our educational spending in administration overhead. And so, there's been a lot of talks in recent years about possibly consolidating school districts. We have different areas and pockets throughout the state, and COVID really exposed things that have been going on for a long time. So it's not that that's something that has just become new. Things have been going on, like technology disparities across the entire state. COVID exposed the fact that we just didn't have one-to-one technology for our students. We still have areas throughout the state of Delaware who don't have access to internet connection, or if they have internet connection, it's substandard. So for instance, in my home, I have 4 remote learners. That is insane for me. So if you could just imagine the competition on my internet connection for 4 streaming devices for Zoom. And so I had a lot of difficulties in the spring. The children would have unstable connection problems. They would lose their connection. I actually had 2 children that were penalized because of attendance issues due to internet connectivity, and they were penalized for it. So, I just have a very passionate want and will to see our children be able to have the necessary tools to be able to succeed academically. And then if you really kind of walk it back a little bit and you look at the focus on college pathways, we have a situation to where there's no other viable pathways to the trades. There are very few vocational schools here in the state, and if you are not able to get into one of those vocational programs, you really don't have a clear-cut pathway in most schools. Now, some do, to being able to be trade certified. So I'd like to see something more expansive come in that creates more opportunity for our young people who don't want to go to college. I mean, we have a large sector of our population who have gone to college and have received degrees that aren't marketable. And so they have, this huge amount of student debt that they can't leverage because in Delaware, our job situation is not set up so that you can get into a good paying job here. So we do lose a lot of our talented youth that have even been educated in our Delaware schools like UD and Delaware State to other states. My daughter, one of my oldest daughters, she lives down in Charlotte, North Carolina because she got a degree from Georgetown University, and instead of coming back home, she decided to go all the way to the East Coast to San Francisco because she could start out making six figures. So we're losing our talented people that, like you identify, come to the state and leave because there just is a lack of opportunity here. Education is a key to being able to create opportunity for people, and we need to do what we can to make sure that our education system is strong and producing people who are career and college ready.
Absolutely. So it's not just a career in kind of going to college, but also multiple opportunities for kids to find different paths, the right path
Yes.
for them, and not have to force feed them into one path or the other. Now, talk to us about the veterans. You being a veteran, what can you do? And your family having a rich history of service. What do you bring to the table? Speak to the veterans who are listening to us today.
Well, I feel very emotional about this subject, so you'll forgive me. I might even well up a tear or two while we talk. My father, he was diagnosed many years ago with terminal illness. And when I finished my service and came back in 97, he sat me in his office and he said, the doctors have given me 2 years to live. Well, I would have had him expiring in 1999. I had him all the way to 2019. So even medical modern science didn't have all of the answers. God at the end had his say, and he kept him for me. And I'm grateful for every second of every minute of every day that I had extra with him. I can tell you that he died without his dignity at the hand of a broken VA system. I spent the last 6 months of his life in a very heated battle with the VA system to be able to get the benefits in place that he was entitled to so that after his passing, my mother would be taken care of. And during his last days, hospice just wasn't enough. And so my mother is a retired RN. She was able to do a lot for his care, but my mother is probably 120 pounds soaking wet, and my father, he was near 200 pounds. So moving him around and trying to do the things to be able to maintain him at home, we made a commitment and a promise to him that we wouldn't put him, in the VA home. And so we were diligent to make sure that he had what he needed in the last days of his life, but it was very difficult. I can tell you that I saw things and heard things that I can never unsee or unhear. And it was troubling to me that as 100% disabled veteran, 100% unemployable, that I couldn't get aid and attendance in place to be able to care for him. And this particular era of service, when the Vietnam veterans came home from war, they weren't even welcomed home. So when I see a veteran walking around in the community, even my children know that when they see that hat that says Vietnam across it, I say, welcome home. And I shake their hand and I thank them for their service. And it's very personal to me that we get a VA system that works. The nation has instituted a choice program. And because we have private doctors and insurance and all these different things that play into the choice program. We just haven't had enough providers to be able to make that work. So we still have a lot of veterans here who are waiting for months at times to be able to be seen for their particular specialty. So, I would like to see some of that changed. I will definitely continue to be a friend to our veteran community and be a champion for change in those respects, in those regards.
All right. Well, let's check in quickly with our audience to see whether you have any questions or comments. Um, yeah, Lola says, bless you. Lola Cook is watching with you. Hi, Lola.
Hi, Lola. Thank you.
And we have a comment from Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones says,
Hey,
God
Dr.
bless these
Jen.
two leaders and rising stars in the state of Delaware, Gloria Garson and Donyale Hall. Let's vote Donyale Hall as our lieutenant governor. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Definitely do have a supporter there. And folks on Facebook, continue to send in your comments. If you have any question, we have folks watching. But again, if you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to type it in. And I will make sure that Donyale would answer your questions. Now, Donyale, you're a small business owner and a general contractor. That is a group that has been hit really hard with the COVID-19 and all the shutdowns this year. What do you have to say to the small business that have had to shutter their doors or are now in a condition where they don't know where the future lies or what they can do to sustain their families? You are you're a small business owner. So speak to that group and tell them what you can do to help them if you're elected as lieutenant governor.
So when we started witnessing and feeling the shutdown and the domino effect to businesses, we had a time where there was a classification of businesses that could remain open. Some were considered essential, some were considered non-essential. So that in and of itself was an interesting type of dynamic, because although my business was considered essential, the clients that I would typically serve, their doors were shuttered. And so because they couldn't pay services like mine, there was a ripple effect, that it has a cascading effect downhill from there. So even though I was allowed to stay open, my flux of work had changed drastically. So, it was springtime, grass was growing, and we've had a very long, wet season all summer. So the grass has been growing and growing and growing. So if you did lawn and landscaping, I saw a lot of people who, in the absence of having their regular work stream, they took up, doing some lawn and landscaping. So you saw a lot of pop-up businesses that decided that they would take, their lawnmowers and lawn equipment on the road and, make up the difference for the shortfall in their incomes. It's very sad that over the entire span of our phased reopening strategy, that 37% of our businesses have permanently closed. Now, in the small business sense, our job backbone structure is set up so that our small business engine are what our employees have. And so with that many businesses closing their doors permanently, it begs the question, where are the people going to work? So, we have to start really looking at things through a different lens and figuring out how we bring our small business community back. We need revitalization. So, it takes a person who has those kinds of inner working knowledges and skill sets to really be able to speak to how we go about creating a good economic development plan. I'm blessed. I have a master's degree in business with a concentration in finance, like I stated before. I worked for several years for the U.S. Department of Labor for Veterans Employment and Training Services, where I had firsthand opportunity to see the federal dollars that came into the state of Delaware to support those statewide programs. Well, we had a quarterly reporting system where every 3 months you got to see if the money was getting where it needed to be. And so I'm thinking thinking to myself, if we can have that in our state so that we can act as oversight for the federal dollars, we should be able to set aside monies that will be targeted specifically for growing the small business community. There are opportunity zone monies that are out there, and Delaware has the designation for an opportunity zone. But there again, we have to create the mechanism that allows that money to be funneled into Delaware, and we have to have the accountability. We need to have the measurable outcomes. The metrics are important so that we can continue to tap into those resources. But I believe that's what we do to get an insurgence into our small business community to help them grow. One of the things that I saw when the Small Business Administration had all of the federal dollars to be able to give out to the small businesses to help them keep their doors open throughout the shutdown, we saw a complete absence of relationships of particularly minority-owned businesses with the lending partners. So for instance, if you were a small business and you banked with a specific bank that did not have that designation as a lending partner, you essentially had to start with square one with an application process. So if you had a relationship, it was streamlined. You would be able to put in your application. You'd already had your credit checked, your business credentials were in place. And so it was just a matter of getting you in line and queue to be able to receive the money. So I found that a lot of businesses fell through the cracks. I've spoken with business owners as recent as this week that said that they put in their application for that and they still have not heard back, and they applied back in March. These are the horror stories that you hear, but I don't think that the powers that be right now are very sensitive because it's not their walk. I'm sorry, but none of these, state office holders miss the paycheck. It's the little guys that miss the paycheck. And we've been trying to figure out, how we make ends meet throughout this crisis. So I think that just having a voice that can speak to the needs of that particular sector is going to be critical on how we move forward after the pandemic has kind of leveled off and we can reemerge and revitalize, economically here.
Thank you, Donyale. Again, for those who are just joining us, we have been going through, Donyale brings a very rich and textured experience to her platform. She has 10 kids, which is amazing in and of itself. And she's able to, I told her that with 10 kids, she can herd cats up in Dover. Being able to raise 10 kids is a challenge by itself. She's an Air Force vet, and she's a small business owner, a general contractor, and we're still going through some of her experience. And she's not only a vet, her father was served in the United States and also had 2 kids. Her sons are now serving as well. Her family has a rich heritage of serving this nation. The next point I wanted to kind of hit on is the diversity and inclusion that you mentioned. And we actually do have a question on Facebook for that. Dr. Jones asks the question, what advantage would it be to Delaware to have an African-American woman and a Republican as a lieutenant governor?
Thank you for that question. I appreciate that. So, there's unfortunately in this day and age, I think there's a lot of very negative partisan rhetoric. And I think that it's sad that has been at the forefront of people's minds. And because we have such a battle back and forth about, partisan politics, that I feel that has taken front and center stage, and it's a distraction. It's very much a distraction away from the issues that we really need to be laser focused on. So for instance, I had a debate recently, and my opponent decided that, she would throw that card out there because, traditionally as Black and brown people, we typically affiliate as Democrats. And so they feel like they can get that emotional knee-jerk response by throwing out that she's a Republican Republican. All Republicans are bad. But, I constantly have talked to people, and I have given them a sense of who I am and what I bring to the table. And I have charged and challenged people with a vote your values and not your party affiliation. If you look over the span of history, we started out as Republicans. Frederick Douglass was a Republican, and then we shifted some years down the line. And, there has been a back and forth, if you will. And if you educate yourself about, what Frederick Douglass stood for, he was a person for the people. So I tell people all the time, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I have a heart for the people, to serve the people. And where I have walked makes me relatable, because I've been hurt by Delaware policy. I've seen the downfalls, the pitfalls, and all of that, especially where diversity and inclusion is a thing. I've sat at roundtable discussions to talk about just that. In the state of Delaware, there has been a constant conversation about the fact that minority-owned businesses don't really get a seat at the table when it comes to the awarding process. And so I had an opportunity back in 2016, sitting at a roundtable discussion with Governor Carney, who was not elected at that point, but he sat and he listened to a room full of minority-owned contracting businesses. And I sat very quietly in the room and listened to everybody else's input. And he made his way around the table to me, and he said, I haven't heard from you yet. And I said, well, sir, I am an ethnic and a gender minority. I'm a disabled owned veteran business, and I check all of the boxes when it comes down to doing a bid. They want to know if you fit any of those categories. And I say, I check off all of those. And I still have been unsuccessful in being able to get awarded one of these contracts. It's 4 years later, and I'm still waiting for that answer on why it is, businesses like mine have not been successful in that realm. So I think that the advantage of having someone like me in a very key position of decision making, that is going to shape the influence of what we do with changing that culture. I think that being able to be a strong voice, as you can tell, I have no problems articulating truth to power. And I've called a lot of folks out on the mat about being accountable for the things that are happening here and doing better. I think a lot of politicians around election time, they pander to the community. And they say things that make you feel like they really have a cause for concern about you and your life and your plight and the things that you find to be egregious. However, if you think about it, before COVID hit, we still had all these problems. Where were you then? Where have you been for the last 3.5 years? Now you want me to give you yet another term to not meet my needs. I say that it's time out for that, and that we really find people who have the courage of their convictions to get the job done. We need to have the needle moved. I'm tired of people talking that talk. I need somebody who's going to have an action plan and get it done. And I'm committed to being that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And even the question that Dr. Jones asked is really just, it infuriates me to hear people bunch all African Americans into one party as if we don't have a mind of our own. We can't make up our minds. And that's really very, in my view, just very unlearned of people. It's a little ignorant of people to do that. African American people can make up their minds, can be Republican and can be, Democrat and all that. So it's just silly to hear that, but again and again people do that. And like you said, it's really embarrassing that somebody threw that card down to sort of disqualify you because you're African American and you're not a Democrat. That is so ridiculous.
It is.
At this time, we should be focused on who would get the job done.
Amen.
Not who looks in a certain way or who has what, card. And in fact, my challenge would be, yes, you're a Democrat. What have you done for the state of Delaware? What have you done with your role and your position? So that's obviously a challenge. Right. Mike Ancona has a comment. He says, I am always leery of the presupposition that people of any ethnic group can only have one set of political ideas. that they must vote in a monolithic way.
Amen.
I was saying actually the same thing, and Mike is,
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. Danielle, we're coming towards the end of our conversation here. You know, the time
Already?
is when you're having fun. Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, speak to the area of crime in Delaware. Obviously, Delaware is the bottom. You know, again, there was a study that was done. It was, I think it was in June of last year, and I had a show on it that really looked across the nation in the major cities, and Delaware was just number 6 from the bottom on many issues like education and crime. So, talk to us. What would you do in your role as Lieutenant Governor to address the crime issue in Delaware?
Well, one of the roles, and we really didn't talk about the actual constitutional responsibilities of the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor presides over the Senate, and so that keeps order inside of the Senate chamber. And also, in the event of a tie in the voting, the lieutenant governor would be able to cast the tie-break vote. In addition to that, the lieutenant governor chairs the Board of Pardons. Now, currently, we don't have any African Americans that sit on that board. And if you take a look at our crime, Delaware is among the top in the nation for one of the most dangerous places to live. And so to be so small, that's an alarming number. If you look at our prison population, Delaware is about 23.5% Black and brown by population, but we occupy 60% of the prisons. In addition to that, the recidivism rate within a 3-year period is 65%. So we're really not doing things to properly educate our children. The prison to pipeline reality is very real here. So we have to do something to break that cycle within our education system to divert the population going to the prisons. So we have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that we attack that from the education perspective. In addition to that, for those who have made some wrong choices and found themselves incarcerated, we need to deal wholeheartedly with effectively rehabilitating those individuals so that when they come out, they don't go back into the same environment. Create some wraparound care for those individuals and some supports in the community that help them not to reoffend and go back. So we have our work cut out, but again, because of that statistic, I think every person of color in the state of Delaware either knows somebody who's incarcerated or has a loved one that is incarcerated. And so it's very important to me that we do what we need to do to make sure that we fix the problem so that we can turn those numbers around.
Absolutely. Let's connect again with our audience as we begin to wind down. Mike says, I'll be voting for you, Donyale.
Thank you, Mike. Spread the word. Grab your family, grab your friends, call on election day and say, have you voted? Do you need a ride? We got to come out in record numbers. We can get this done and we can get the second highest seat in the state of Delaware and be able to actually have some say and some control over how things move forward in the future here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Having a Republican in that role, I mean, like Dr. Jones pointed out, is obviously a new thing in Delaware. So we need some fresh, we need a change. We need a fresh wind of change. Donyale, for those who are listening to you today, what will be your takeaways for our audience? What would you like them to walk away from this conversation? Knowing that
Thank you.
what would you like them to do on November 3rd?
Well, of course, on November 3rd, I would be humbled if you would come out and you would cast your vote for me. Make sure that you can tell the difference. Now, my name is Donyale. Both of us share a piece of a last name. I'm Hall, but she's Hall Long. So make sure you find Donyale Hall for Lieutenant Governor. Okay. And in addition to that, spread the word. Like I said, it's not about party, it's about people. I need people to be educated about their candidates, not only about me, but all of the candidates, because I'm not the only bubble you need to fill in on your mail-in ballot or the button that you need to push when you get in the voting booth. So do your homework, be educated about who's out there, understand that it's strategic for us as Black and Brown people to have our agenda and our needs on both sides of the political aisle. We need to have a voice, regardless whether you're Democrat or Republican, to make sure that the things that are concerns to you are always represented. That's critical. So, make sure, like I said, that you get out and you vote. You call your friends and your sphere of influence and your family, and make it a family event. Make it festive. Go out and celebrate. Get your I voted sticker. Go on there and be excited that you participated and that you participated in an educated fashion. Thank you so much, Gloria. I appreciate you today.
Absolutely. And what a joy. And one last question for you. Talk to us about your faith,
Oh,
and how that plays into your role that you plan to play as Lieutenant Governor of Delaware.
well, after all those other boxes I check, I'm happy to say that I am a daughter of the King, and I'm not ashamed to share that. I've been through a lot of hurt, hardship, and pain, and I give all the glory to the man upstairs for giving me what I needed to go through those moments. And so I heavily rely on my faith. I stepped out on this journey by faith. I feel that it is a divine assignment. I feel that in a time where our nation seeks to remove God out of any and everything, that we find ourselves as believers in the minority, and that can't be anymore. Now, we can't legislate morality, but we can certainly have morality in our legislation. So when we have people who have some integrity and want to bring that to the political realm, that is important. And what better integrity is there to have than to have, the man upstairs looking down and holding you accountable ultimately. I don't want the blood on my hands for the things that I know that he has charged and challenged me with. And so I would like to bring that piece to your viewing audience, that yes, I am unashamedly a daughter of the King.
Amen. Thank you so much, Donyale. It's been a joy to have you on our show today. And again, you've articulated a very credible, very persuasive platform, and one I believe that anyone can truly sign on to. You bring a rich diversity of experience, a rich texture of experience that really, in my view, touches every family in the nation, and particularly in the state of Delaware. And I do believe that you have a credible voice that will be helpful to us as people, to the church, and just to every human being, every person within the state of Delaware, because you are representing every citizen of Delaware. We look forward that you will be a citizen, representative for us in that role, and that God will help you and advance you into the role. And of course, just to let you know, we will hold you accountable.
Please do.
Everyone that we
Please
talk to,
do.
we
My
will be
phone
there.
number's been the same for 16 years. So if I'm not doing right, I expect you to be on my phone and I will answer.
We will. I tell that to all our candidates that we will hold you accountable,
Yes, ma'am.
because that we are there to assist you to do your job better and to be the support and the resource that you need, and also to help you kind of, if you're getting a blind spot like we see a lot, we can help you kind of to peel that away and say, hey, look at what you're missing. And
That's
so we
right.
can help you have a broad base, bring things into your frame so you can see them. Thank you so much. And for those who joined us yesterday, we had a powerful, a wonderful time of prayer for our leaders like Donyale, those who are going to elect, and praying for them according to the word of God. If you missed that, don't worry. We have some videos. We're going to put that forward in the coming weeks. So be prepared for that. And I have one more announcement. On November 1st, throughout the month of November, we are going to have a November worship praise campaign to take over the atmosphere. We have heard a lot of negative news about November, about the elections, and people are predicting all kinds of things. But we are the people of God. They are not in charge, we are. So we refuse to let anybody hijack this nation, hijack our states, and turn it into chaos. So we are going to set the atmosphere, and we do that through praise and worship. So be tuned in, and more details will be coming. We're going to give you items to thank God for, and then a praise point, and we'll celebrate together. Let's keep his praise glorious throughout this state and amplify it throughout this nation and around the world, and bring down every voice of opposition, and let his name alone be magnified. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Donyale Hall. It's been a fascinating conversation with you. And I look forward to seeing you as
Thank
Lieutenant
you.
Governor of the state of
Thank
Delaware.
you.
God bless you.
God bless you.